The Shepnaz Podcast begins now.
Welcome to the Shepnaz Podcast. I'm Joe, and I'm your host today for
Worship Wednesday.
Happy New Year.
Woo!
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Happy New Year.
Let's see how this
Pop
works.
one off, Joe.
Trying to get it towards the camera. Yeah.
Woo!
Happy New Year. Right at...
Game on.
Oh, ooh, that one. We're going to have somebody inspect that later. Wow. If only you guys knew what it took to get this episode started.
I have no clue. Best day of my life.
Yeah.
Best day of my life. Oh, I'm leaving it.
We hit a home run of the third time at bat.
Third time's a charm, right? Oh, man. It's worth it. Worth every second.
Oh, wait. Let's see. I did have... special guest Noah is here today. There he is.
There he is. Thanks for being here, Noah.
Oh, glad to see you there, buddy.
It's almost like he works another job somewhere.
What do you mean? It's midnight. It just turned Happy New Year.
I know, but he's busy boy.
Oh, he just must be working late.
I know. Late night for Noah. He watched the ball drop from the trenches.
Yeah, we watched it from this closet.
We spent Christmas morning together.
Yeah.
We were spending Christmas or New Year's Eve together.
Our families are so understanding.
Yeah, they are.
They are.
We're blessed.
By the way, very nice headgear.
Thank you. You as well.
That are watching on video. This is horrible.
Sorry you have to see this, but also you're welcome.
We had to both do this. There's no way just one of us could do it because either one of us just is completely humiliating.
Right.
But together, it's still humiliating.
Now we just get to share in it. I love it.
All right.
Oh, so good.
You're all welcome if you're watching the video. Yeah. And if you're not, you probably should.
Highly recommend checking out that.
All right. So it is a new year.
It is. Happy New Year, pal.
Did you want to take this opportunity to, take a look back and kind of just...
feel like we should
over the year and that kind of thing.
100%. I feel like we should. Cool. Happy New Year. We're gonna, though we are excited for the new year. Let's look back and remember some fun stuff,
the good times.
It was a crazy year.
I almost feel like I should have, which it's not going to get done, but in my mind's eye, I see like a slow motion montage of starting out the new year with Joey and, having some episodes with him. So shout out to Joey who's in Florida enjoying
the sunshine.
Yeah, down there. And
must be nice, Joey.
He's playing disc golf all the time. I
dodging gators.
Yeah. And, just kind of all those moments and, like... maybe Noah's first episode when he was, when he grew up and he was an adult and got to be on the podcast. And
his big debut as a big boy. Just good times. The introduction of Worship Wednesday.
Yes, the beginning.
Yeah.
I think what happened around July, maybe.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I have no clue. It's all a blur at this point. It's one big Worship
Wednesday
Wednesday in my
Wednesday
book.
Ago. Yes. So, what are some moments for you that you'd like to look back on?
There's so many, Joe. There's so many. And so I'm going to start with the most recent because of my terrible memory.
Okay.
But we just got done doing When Everything Changed. And we did a recap of When Everything Changed. And I want to say, even as of recently, like in the past few days, I was up in my office, if you don't know, at the Fenster House, if you've ever been in here. It's an old house, thin walls, you hear everything. And so I was up working on some stuff. My office is upstairs, and Natalie was downstairs taking a phone call, and just hearing somebody who was so impacted by when everything changed. And again, I want to preface this. I'm not looking for a pat on the back. Like we worked hard on those. We're proud of them. But our goal was just to reach people for the kingdom of God. And even just as of a few days ago, hearing people calling in literally just to say that they were so impacted by what God did through that. That was huge. That was huge. And it was one of those things where, you know, again, we shared this in that episode, so I'm not going to just repeat another episode, but, you know, it was a big undertaking. We were a little nervous when Rob said, you know, he watched Trans-Siberian Orchestra and wanted us to do something. But our prayer from day one is that it would impact people for the kingdom, and it did. So I think that was one of my favorite things that has happened this year. And even also, I was talking to somebody from our church this week. And so after when everything changed, so if you don't know, give you a little look into the world of a worship leader at church, especially around Christmas time. So normally churches will do like a really big production for Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Like that's their bread and butter, if you
the
will.
Super Bowl.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the show of the year, right? And so a lot of people put that into it, but I think it was pretty intentional that we did not do that for Christmas Eve.
Right.
You know, we wanted a more evangelistic, you know, invite your friends, invite your neighbors or whatever. But we also did a Christmas Eve service. And if I'm just being utterly transparent, I put all of my eggs in the when everything changed basket. And Christmas Eve kind of fell on the wayside for me, if I'm just being honest and transparent here. So we did a really stripped down, traditional, literally acoustic guitar. I was playing acoustic and sang, my wife sang, and your son Luke played percussion. Right. And that was it. And we just did some pretty traditional stuff. We threw in one or two songs that aren't super traditional, but just it was simple. It was acoustic guitar, and that was it. And I was talking to somebody on Sunday, and in my head, you know, I was almost feeling guilty of like, man, I should have put more intention into this, you know, been thinking further out, and I didn't. But a lady from our church came up to me and she said, you know, normally around Christmas time, I turn on the radio and I'm listening to Christmas songs and like traditional Christmas carols with piano and organ and choir and all this. I said, for whatever reason, this year specifically, I was really drawn to Christmas songs played on guitar. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And she said, so when I showed up, not knowing what I was expecting, and just saw literally guitar, hand percussion, and your wife singing, I almost felt like that was God's way of saying this was for me this year.
Nice.
It was so cool. And like, you know, and I love that God works like that, you know, because in my insecurities and in my busyness, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm dropping the ball. But the way that God used that, even if it was just for her, you know, that it was God's way of saying, like, I'm going to use this and I'm going to speak to this person. And thankfully, she wasn't the only one who was complimentary. Not that we're looking for a pat on the back, but, you know, sometimes we do things and it feels like, oh, shoot, I dropped the ball or I didn't put enough intention into it. And God's like, no, I'm going to use this.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was a great change of pace because especially as you're looking at it from both the worship and the tech side of things, like during when everything changed, you're so focused on making sure what is supposed to happen happens at the time that it's supposed to happen. And like, there's a lot to coordinate and you're doing that. And I know we call it a production, and I never know a good word to use for that. Right. But you're trying to facilitate a worship experience where you want people to meet God and you want to show it in the best possible way. Yeah. Not because you're trying to impress somebody, but because of how great he is. Exactly. We want to at least try to, in whatever meager way we can, shine the best light we possibly can. Yep. And so in doing all those things, sometimes after the fact, there's just a collective, and it
100%.
is so nice just with worship and tech to be able to say, you know what, let's just all lay back a little bit,
take a breath.
Let's just really take this moment on Christmas Eve to worship together with everyone, not just creating an environment where it's intended for them to be able to have an encounter with God, but let's all do this together and just kind of relax a little bit.
100%.
And so it was really nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, I agree. It was definitely a moment where I felt like, you know, just echoing what you said, when we were doing the big production, it was, you know, I'm deadlock focused on like, okay, I need to know when my transitions are. These tracks are starting. I need to know my parts, make sure the band knows what they're doing, who's coming up when, you know, there's so many pieces. And so for that, it was like, we can just sit. Like we literally just put benches out on the stage and we just sat and worshiped together. And it was nice. It was really nice. So.
Well, it's not like there hasn't been anything going on at the church this past year. I mean,
Not
really,
at all.
as I'm just kind of going through things in my head, it's like, wow, there was a lot in 2024.
Yes, there was.
I mean, we moved into the building in Johnstown, and that meant, first of all, I can remember almost a year ago now, going into the basement there at the church and tearing down the ceiling and the walls and all the nastiness that was in that basement. And then we ended up getting, you know, and had a ton of people helping to do that, got that all cleaned out and started doing work upstairs. And Nick and Andy Wilson did a lot of painting and a lot of other volunteers there in
Shout out
Johnstown.
Andy, we miss you.
And, you know, they started getting stuff painted and we pulled up the old carpet and, you know, ended up getting new carpet, ended up having to deal with bats, getting them out.
Yeah.
A lot of new electric and all that kind of stuff, building a screen up there, getting a system set up where they would have a permanent place to have worship.
Yeah.
There's been a lot. And then
100%.
they finally got to move in June. So they've been in like 6 months now and starting to get a feel for it. I think of, the worship night that we had.
I was literally
up
just
there.
going to bring that up, man.
I mean, I know we did like a whole episode on that before, but that was just a remarkable time during the year and one of those like, we'll remember that.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I would
sure.
say that's a huge highlight of my year because exactly what you're saying. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. This hat will not stay on my head.
Yeah, we're having
It's
this
fine.
very nice conversation.
I just keep feeling like it's
We're
unicorn
looking
horn.
at the
It's
goofiest
fine.
look
Everything's
to
fine.
each other.
But yeah, I love it. But looking back on that, like all of the things that we faced with moving into that building, you know, the bats and the renovations and just the hurdles that we had to jump. Like I remember specifically like being up on that stage for the worship night. The room is packed with people from Johnstown and Gahanna. Like that to me was beautiful to see both campuses coming together to worship. And just, I remember having that moment of like, I remember the first time we walked into this building and like genuinely questioning, like I knew we were going to get it done. I knew God had a plan, but you know, in our humanness and my humanness, I was like, okay, God, what do you have planned for here? Because this is going to be crazy. And then the whole bat thing and everything that happened. But standing up there and worshiping in that room, it was just like, that to me was like a God moment of him saying like, I've had this all planned out. I've had this figured out from day one. And this is what I wanted to see happen. And like we said in that episode, like that might've been one of my favorite worship nights that I had been a part of.
And it was a summer night and the doors were open. We had a couple kids walk in that were just walking down the street and heard this, you know, a bunch of noise coming out.
Right.
It's like, what in the world's going on in this place? And they came
100%.
in and joined us. I mean, it was really phenomenal.
Yeah.
And as I think, while that was happening in Johnstown and kind of during that first half of the year, Here we endeavored something we hadn't done before with the Good Friday experience.
Yeah.
When we were like, hey, let's do Good Friday a different way than what we've done before. And I would say historically, people do, a lot of churches will do a big kind of Easter production kind of thing. And that's not been our typical around here. But we took a different slant. We're like, let's take advantage of Good Friday and let's really, use this as an evangelistic opportunity to see, to tell the story.
Yeah.
We had a lot of great fun with that. We were all through this whole building here in Gahanna, used a lot of it.
Yep.
And it was just encouraging to see all the volunteers that got involved in the little different scenes and small groups that were helping decorate those different scenes and people that were doing the parts and everything. Just amazing how that all was coming together while that was happening. So it's been, and then of course, in more recent months, we've been talking about the school expansion and we got a new playground built and we're working on breaking ground on a pavilion and the building. And
it's been an awesome year, a big year. But something that it just popped in my head while you're saying this that I love, I think of the Good Friday thing and I think of when everything changed is the way that our church has creatively been able to tell the biblical story. I think that's one thing that I love about this church. And, I think back to, we've done a few episodes about the Overflow Conference.
Yeah.
And last year, which is coming up. So if you're listening to this and you want to go, I'm sending out an email, hit me up if you want to go. But there was a speaker, he's a videographer and makes videos. And he did a talk and a presentation all about the importance of sharing your story and sharing the story, the best story ever told. And not to diss on anybody, but I feel like a lot of times churches don't do a good job at that. We get up on the platform, we share the head knowledge stuff, and we forget that it's a beautiful artistic story that was written. And that's something I love that I look back on this year with the Good Friday and when everything changed is that we're telling a story, the best story ever told. And so I love that when we did the Good Friday thing, we were telling a story that you got to experience. You're hearing, obviously they're characters, it's people from our church who are, read a script, but they're hearing a different perspective of it that had never been done before. And definitely, that's the biggest thing I've heard of when everything changed. So many people, when we shared the story of the retired pastor whose friend and his wife gave their lives to Jesus, and his words were, of all my years of ministry, I've never experienced a more creative, evangelistic Christmas story. And so that's something I just love about this team. Something I love about what we do here at Shepherd is getting to be a part of, one, doing something new and innovative, which I think is something we're good at. But two, doing it in a way that doesn't pat us on the back. It literally just points people to Jesus. And that's something I just love. The artisticness, I think of God, the creator. He created everything. That's artistic.
Yeah.
There's something so artistic about it. I mean, it's something like a zebra. It's like, oh yeah, I already got a horse, right. But let me get artistic and make it beautiful. It's like, I just think that's beautiful in the way that God has created us, and that this church specifically, for me selfishly, has allowed me to do that and to use the artistic abilities that God has given me, not to pat myself on the back, but to tell the greatest story ever told. So that's something I love, and I think we've done a really good job this year of doing that. Nice. And I can't wait to see what 2025 holds.
Yes.
It's only getting started.
Yes. All right. So I was figuring that I might give you some stats.
Ooh.
If I can get to them.
If we can find them.
See.
Right.
All
right. Good.
So this is more about you guys that are listening than it is about us.
Yeah.
In 2023, we started the Shepnaz Podcast, and we've been doing that every day ever since.
Literally every day. Dude, if I had a nickel for every time somebody said, how many do you do a week?
Really? Every day? What? Yeah. So part of that has been, we kind of wondered, like, is this going to be something that will carry on, that will start to have a life of its own?
Yeah.
And we're seeing how the Lord is working through it, and we really appreciate you guys listening, and we hope that it's helpful to you in what you do in taking your next step toward Jesus. We also hope that you're sharing it with other people, so that it can bless them in the same way that it's blessing you. And for us, being on this side of it, that's why we're doing it.
Yes.
We're not doing it to draw attention. We're not doing it to be able to say that we do it. We're doing it because it aligns with our mission to help people take their next step. And if that means just a little bit of encouragement every day, that is what we're all about. And we're hoping that you can spread that to your friends and family and associates, people that you come in contact with, so that they can be encouraged by it as well.
100%.
So one of the things that I found curious, at the end of each year, if you listen on Spotify or you have a Spotify account, normally at the end of the year, towards the end of the year, they'll give you a thing called Wrapped, and it'll tell you
Wrapped
about, like, here's everything you've been listening to this year, and this is what you're like, and if you didn't know, this is the style of music that you like. I mean, it's telling you about you, right?
Right.
So they do the same thing, though, since our podcast is on Spotify. It's on all audio platforms as well as YouTube. But Spotify is nice enough to say, hey, we'll tell you what's actually happening
so kind
with
of them.
your podcast, at least as far as we're concerned.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was looking at is that we had gains this year.
Awesome.
19% plus of followers.
Awesome.
And I am scrolling through here.
You're good.
58% of our listeners discovered us this year.
Wow.
Imagine that. Now, again, these are Spotify stats.
Yeah.
So I would imagine a lot of our YouTubers and a lot of our Apple Music people are people that are carryovers from the first year, but 58% of the people that listen to us on Spotify started this year.
That's awesome.
Our fans have a clear favorite. Do you have any idea what their favorite episode was?
Ooh, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, it was, to give you an idea, we did 262 episodes this year.
Wowzers.
Thank you, Susan.
For real, though.
And the number one episode for this past year was episode number 153, which was Worship Wednesday, the Vacation Replacements.
No way.
Congratulations.
Wow. Look at us. Listen, we did it. We did it.
That particular episode was streamed 168% more than the average episode.
Wow.
So have you ever wondered who our audience is, at least our audience as it pertains to Spotify? Well, this was stats that I was very encouraged by.
Yeah.
Because we have a spread, which is great. You know, you don't want to see a bunch of high peaks in one particular area and then low lows in the other. All right. So 18 to 24 is 14%.
Okay.
25 to 29 is 27%. 30 to 34 is 11%. 35 to 44 is 21%. 45 to 54, 8%, and 55 plus 19%. So
that's cool.
Spread.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's really encouraging.
Yeah, it is.
And the area of growth that we've had the most by 25%. Now, I told you before our growth was about 19% on Spotify, but we had a 25% increase in the 25 to 29 age group.
That's awesome.
So,
that's awesome, man. And that just shows you that God's moving.
where in the world have we been? It says we've been in 6 different countries.
Wow.
But the United States was the top one.
I mean,
we can probably thank some of our missionaries and their their fans
seriously
for some of those other countries.
That's wild.
And it says that other shows. Are you curious of what other shows?
Oh, I'm very curious.
Some of our podcast subscribers subscribe to.
Yes.
I don't think this will be some of them might be a surprise. This is not an endorsement on any of these.
We're just sharing statistics
We're just
here,
reporting
folks.
the facts here. All right. So the number one other show that people subscribe to when they subscribe to the Shepnaz Podcast is the Nateland Podcast, which is Nate Bargatze's. Sister Wives is number 2. Wow.
Interesting.
The Joe Rogan Experience is number 3.
Figured that was on there.
Don, Tony, and Kevin Castle show is 4th, and the Armchair Expert Dex Shepard is number 5.
Oh, man.
Here is the music that you guys listen to when you're not listening to the Shepnaz Podcast. Number 1, classic rock.
Hey.
Number 2, country, and number 3, pop. Imagine that. But when it comes to your audiobook genres, your number 1 pick is religion and spirituality.
Okay,
Number 2 is self-help. And number 3 is business and careers. Well, you guys are trying to get yourselves together, aren't you?
Getting your lives together through these podcasts.
Get it straight.
You start here with Worship Wednesday and then work your way down. I get it.
All right. And so on Spotify, it's unusual because it's one of the, it's the only real major audio podcast platform that does video. Yeah. So we're on video on YouTube, but we're also on video on Spotify. So our videos on Spotify were watched 55% more in 2024 than they were in 2023.
Nice.
Which means people just wanted to, I got to see this.
They literally heard us at the beginning of this episode and they're like, nope, I got to watch what they're wearing.
I better pull the car over. I need to see that hat. All right. Now, I can't quantify this. I'm only reporting the facts here of what they said. But Spotify sent us a little thing that says your show was in the top 10% of video podcast on Spotify.
What?
Now, I would imagine there is a huge difference between the top 10% and the top 2%.
Yeah. But
by
still,
millions.
That's crazy.
But so we ended up being in the top 10% of Spotify video podcast.
That's huge.
So
that's huge.
I mean, well, we increased by 19%, so that means we had 5 people, and now we have 6.
Right? Come on now. You guys are the best. Give us 7 in 2025. Hold on. Right. Woo!
Hey! Fire a live one.
Come on.
I still have a dud over here somewhere.
Yeah, which one is the one that's going to blow up in our face?
There we go.
Right. America.
So anyhow, I thought I would let you all know that.
That's awesome, dude. Those are great.
But we really appreciate you guys are the ones that are making that happen.
100%.
And we want to continue this on. Any words for us as we're starting this brand new year?
Yeah, just continue to lean into the Father. Listen to his voice. I think of the sermon that Rob preached, would have been 2 weeks ago now, of just listening to the voice of God. You know, that's as we, it's always easy for us to make plans and you got your New Year's resolutions, take time to actually ask God, what do you have for me in 2025? I know that's something I'm doing and need to do more. But just listen to what God has for you in this new year. And if you're listening to his voice, it's going to be good.
Sounds great, brother. All right. Well, we're going to, as Spotify said, we're going to wrap this.
Wrap it up.
We hope that you are having a new year that will be blessed and that you will get a little closer to Jesus this year. Yep. That will be the ultimate sign of a good year for you. To be able to look back and say, I'm a little closer to Jesus this year than I was last year. Also, you can check out everything that's going on with the church by going to shepnaz.org. We'd love it if you would follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Do all those likes, subscribes, notifications, comments. For Pastor Zack, I'm Joe. Have a great day. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.
Happy New Year!